In the harsh winter of 1875, a mail-order bride steps off a stagecoach in Ash Hollow, Colorado, clutching letters from a dead man. Clara May Winslow traveled 2,000 miles to marry a miner who now lies beneath the very earth he once excavated. The town before her is a graveyard of broken dreams, where widows walk like shadows and the mine's dark mouth threatens to swallow what remains. She has nothing left but a return ticket east and the weight of failure on her shoulders. That is, until she meets Silas Boone, a widowed rancher who hasn't spoken more than 10 words to anyone since burying his wife and child 3 years ago. But what secret lies buried in the mine's depths, darker than coal and deadlier than grief? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The letters crumpled in Clara May's grip as she stood before Ash Hollow's general store, her carpetbag heavy with Eastern dreams gone west to die. The store's window displayed a black mourning dress, its somber reflection a cruel mockery of the white wedding gown she'd packed with such care. Around her, the late afternoon wind whipped dust through streets that seemed to lead nowhere but to the mine's yawning mouth on the mountainside. "Miss Winslow?" The station master's wife, Mrs. Peterson, touched her elbow gently. "Perhaps you'd like to come inside for some tea." Her voice carried the practiced softness reserved for delivering bad news, though the worst had already been said. Thomas Fletcher, Clara's intended, had died in a cave-in 12 days ago, leaving behind nothing but ink-scratched promises and a grave marker fresh enough that the dirt hadn't settled. "I should—" Clara's voice caught. Should what? Return east? Face her sister's pitying looks, her father's stern "I told you so's" about marrying a man she'd never met? "I should purchase that dress," she finished, nodding toward the window. Mrs. Peterson's face creased with understanding. "Martha at the boarding house has a spare room. First week's free for circumstances such as these." Inside the store, the proprietor measured black fabric against Clara's height with efficient sympathy. The bell above the door chimed, and conversations hushed as Bradford Wells entered, his suit too fine for a mining town, his watch chain glinting gold against a silk vest. He removed his hat, revealing steel-grey hair and eyes that assessed everything in terms of profit and loss. "Miss Winslow," he said, though Clara hadn't introduced herself, "my deepest condolences. Thomas was one of our finest men. A terrible accident." Something in his tone made Clara's spine stiffen. She'd heard that same false sympathy in her father's business associates, men who spoke of unfortunate circumstances while calculating their advantages. "The cave-in," she said carefully. "Was it common in that section of the mine?" Wells's smile tightened. "Mining's dangerous work, my dear. Men know the risks when they sign on, but perhaps—" He paused, adjusting his cufflinks. "Perhaps we could discuss this over dinner. A new arrival like yourself must have questions about our little community." Before Clara could respond, the store's bell chimed again. A man entered, trail dust coating his long duster, his presence filling the space like storm clouds gathering. Wells's posture changed subtly, recognition and wariness crossing his features. "Boone," Wells nodded curtly. "Unusual to see you in town." The man, Boone, didn't respond. He moved to the counter, set down a list written in a rough hand, then turned to leave. As he passed Clara, their eyes met briefly. She saw grief there, carved deep as mine shafts, and something else, a flash of recognition, one lost soul seeing another. That evening, in the boarding house's narrow room, Clara unpacked her carpetbag, the white wedding dress she'd sewn with. Such hope now seemed to belong to another woman entirely. She hung the new black dress instead, its heavy folds a shield against pity and unwanted dinner invitations. From her bag, she withdrew Thomas's letters, tied neatly with blue ribbon. She'd memorized every word, every promise of a life together in this wild western town, but now, reading them again in the fading light, something felt off. The passionate declarations, the detailed plans, they rang hollow, like fool's gold. That wouldn't stand up to a saying. Or perhaps that was just grief talking, turning everything she touched to ash. Through her window, she could see the mine entrance up on the mountainside, a black maw waiting to swallow more dreams, somewhere. In its depths lay answers about Thomas, about the accident that Bradford Wells dismissed so easily. And somewhere in this town of widows and secrets, she'd find the truth, even if she had to wear widow's weeds to do it. The sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. In the street below, a rider passed. The man from the store, Boone, heading back to wherever such haunted men went to escape their ghosts. Clara touched the cool glass of her window, watching until he disappeared into the gathering dark. Tomorrow, she would begin asking questions. Tonight, she would mourn the death of one dream, and perhaps, though she didn't know it yet, witness the birth of another. 3 days of questions had yielded nothing but silence and shuttered eyes. Clara's black dress drew respectful nods in the street, but the moment she mentioned Thomas Fletcher or the cave-in, folks found urgent business elsewhere. That's how she found herself on the rutted road to Silas Boone's ranch, following whispers that he'd been the one to pull Thomas's body from the collapse. The ranch house rose from the prairie like a weathered headstone, grey boards and sagging porch telling stories of neglect. A broken music box lay forgotten on the porch rail, its metal innards exposed to the elements, like the bones of a small, mechanical bird. Silas Boone stood at his corral, a rope in his weathered hands as he worked with a wild mustang. The horse, a proud bay stallion, moved in tense circles, nostrils flaring. Clara watched, transfixed, as man and beast engaged in their silent dialogue of trust and patience. "Mr. Boone?" Her voice carried on the wind. He turned, those deep-set eyes finding her with the same careful attention he'd given the horse. Up close, she could see the grief etched into his features, as plain as the lines on a map. He nodded once, acknowledging her presence. "I'm Clara May Winslow. I was to marry Thomas Fletcher." The words still caught in her throat. "I heard you were there when they found him." Silas coiled his rope with deliberate movements. Behind him, the stallion watched, ears pricked forward with curious intensity. "Best come inside," he said finally, his voice rough from disuse. The interior of the ranch house told its own story of loss. Dust lay thick on the mantel where family photographs faced the wall, their backs turned on the world like mourners. A woman's shawl draped over a chair, untouched for so long it had become part of the furniture's grain. Silas filled 2 cups with coffee that smelled strong enough to wash away secrets. "You want to know how he died?" "I want to know why." Clara wrapped her fingers around the warm cup. "Mr. Wells calls it an accident, but—" "Accident." Silas's laugh held no humor. "Like my Sarah and James were an accident." Clara waited, sensing a story that needed telling. 3 years ago," he continued, staring into his coffee as if reading tea leaves, "my wife and boy were riding into town. Bridge over Carson Creek collapsed. Wells's company built it, same as they dug that mine. Said the wood was sound, but—" He shook his head. "Rot goes deep sometimes, hides until it's too late. Understanding bloomed like a desert flower. You think Thomas's death wasn't an accident either?" Silas set down his cup with careful precision. "Think? No, ma'am. I know. I was there when that shaft collapsed. Heard the timbers crying out days before. Reported it too. Wells said they'd shore it up proper. Instead, they pushed the men deeper, chasing a rich vein. When it came down—" He closed his eyes, remembering. Thomas wasn't the only one lost, just the last. The mustang's whinny carried through the window, a sound of wild freedom. Clara watched as Silas's expression softened slightly at the noise. "The horses," she said. "They help you forget?" "Help me remember," he corrected. "Sarah loved wild things, said they had honest hearts." He stood, moving to the mantel. With gentle hands, he turned one of the photographs. A woman with laughing eyes held a small boy on her lap, both smiling at something beyond the camera's reach. "Sometimes remembering's all we got, and sometimes it's not enough." Clara said softly. Thomas wrote me letters for months. Beautiful. Letters about building a life together. But sitting in that boarding house reading them over, they feel like someone else's words now, like I was in love with a story, not a man. Silas studied her with those deep eyes. Truth's like gold, Miss Winslow. Got to dig through a lot of rock to find it. Then help me dig. Clara stood, her black skirts rustling like crows' wings. You know these minds, these people. Help me understand what really happened to Thomas. The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of shared grief and dangerous questions. Finally, Silas turned back to the window, watching his wild horses run circles of freedom against the Colorado sky. Come back tomorrow, he said. I'll teach you to ride. Can't ask questions in this town without quick means of leaving if the answers turn ugly. Clara nodded, understanding both the offer and the warning it contained. As she left the ranch house, the broken music box caught her eye again. Like the mine, like Thomas's letters, like Silas's buried grief, sometimes the most important pieces of truth lay in what was broken. The leather-bound journal lay beneath Clara's pillow like a guilty secret. She'd found it that morning, while helping Martha clean vacant rooms at the boarding house, tucked away in a drawer as if waiting for the right eyes to find it. The deceased. Miner's name, Jacob Wheeler, was scratched into the cover with a shaking hand. In the dim lamplight, Clara traced his final entries. Something ain't right with the new shaft. Timbers sound hollow like they're rotting from inside. Wells says, push deeper, always deeper. Sarah says, leave the mine, find other work, but with baby coming, can't risk losing wages. Just got to hold on till... The entry ended there, dated. In 3 months before Thomas's death. A knock at her door made Clara start. She slid the journal under her pillow before opening the door to find a woman in faded calico, hands twisted in her apron. Mrs. Wheeler. Clara recognized her from Martha's description. Another mining widow, Jacob's wife. Sarah, the woman corrected, stepping inside. Her eyes found the bulge beneath Clara's pillow. I see you found Jake's book. Been wondering where he hid it. Clara retrieved the journal. I'm so sorry, I should have... No. Sarah's voice was firm. Jake would have wanted someone to find it, someone asking questions. She settled into the room's lone chair, one hand resting on her swollen belly. That's why you're still here, isn't it? Not just grieving Thomas, but hunting answers? Clara nodded, sinking onto the bed. The cave-in that killed your husband. Same section of the mine as Thomas. Different collapse, same story. Sarah's bitter laugh held years of accumulated grief. Wells always has pretty explanations. Mining's dangerous work. Men know the risks. But Jake knew something was wrong. Wrote it all down, thinking maybe someone would listen. The rotting timbers? More than that. Sarah leaned forward. Jake tracked every accident, every close call. Said the support beams Wells used weren't seasoned proper. Green wood cut too. Soon guaranteed to warp and split, cheaper that way. And the new shaft? Jake said they were digging too steep, too fast. But Wells had investors breathing down his neck, demanding more coal, more profit. Clara opened the journal, pages crackling. Jacob's careful documentation painted a damning picture. Dates, locations, violations of safety protocols, names of the dead, growing like a grim harvest. Thomas knew, Sarah continued softly. Jake showed him the journal week before the collapse. Thomas said he was going to send copies to the territorial governor, demand an investigation. She met Clara's eyes. 2 days later, he was dead. The implications settled like coal dust in Clara's lungs. It wasn't just negligence. They killed him. Can't prove it. Sarah's hand tightened on her apron. But that section of the mine, Wells sealed it after Thomas died. Said it was too dangerous to recover some of the bodies. Convenient way to bury. Evidence. Outside, boots scuffed on wooden walkways. Voices drifted up, miners heading to the evening shift. Clara thought of them descending into the dark, trusting their lives to rotting timber and men who valued profit over souls. I need to get this journal to someone who can help, Clara said. The territorial marshal, or Wells has friends in the territorial office. Deep pockets buy deeper loyalty. Sarah stood with difficulty. But Silas Boone, he's got no love for Wells, and he knows every trail through these mountains. If anyone can get that journal to honest hands— She left the thought unfinished. Clara nodded, understanding. I'm meeting him tomorrow, for riding lessons. A ghost of a smile touched Sarah's lips. Good. You'll need to ride well in these parts, especially once Wells figures out what you're hunting. She moved to the door, then paused. Be careful, Miss Winslow. Truth's a dangerous thing in Ash Hollow. It's widowed more women than the mine itself. After Sarah left, Clara sat long into the night, reading Jacob's journal by lamplight. The dead man's words painted a portrait of systematic corruption, of greed wearing respectability like a Sunday coat. She thought of Thomas, perhaps killed for trying to expose it all. Thought of Sarah Wheeler, another widow, carrying another fatherless child. Tomorrow she'd take the journal to Silas. Tonight she added her own entry to its pages. Thomas Fletcher died seeking justice. I aim to finish what he started. The words felt like a vow, or maybe a curse. Dawn painted the mountains copper as Clara approached Silas's ranch, Jacob Wheeler's journal secured in her satchel. She found him at the corral again, this time studying a blank marriage license that looked strange in his roughened hands. He spoke without turning. Town's starting to talk. Clara's steps faltered. About the journal? About you. Silas finally faced her, his expression unreadable as the mountains. Single woman, asking questions about the mine, staying past her intended's funeral. Makes folks nervous. Let them be nervous. Clara gripped her satchel tighter. I found proof, Silas. Thomas wasn't the first, and if Wells has his way, he won't be the— Wells has friends coming from Denver tomorrow. Silas's interruption was gentle but firm. Men who make problems disappear. A woman alone without protection. He held up the marriage license. There's a solution. Clara's breath caught. You can't be serious. Practical proposal. Nothing. More. His voice held no romance, only pragmatic concern. My name still carries weight in these parts. Wells can't touch a rancher's wife like he could a dead miner's intended. You'd have freedom to ask your questions, protection to seek your answers. And what would you get from this arrangement? Silas's eyes drifted to the photograph on his mantel, still turned to face the room. Company, maybe. Someone to help with the ranch. And a pause, heavy with memory. Sarah always said justice needs witnesses. Can't witness much living alone out here with my ghosts. Clara studied the marriage license, its blank lines waiting for signatures like an unwritten fate. People will. Talk more, not less. Let them. Town needs something to gossip about besides death. She thought of Sarah Wheeler's warning about truth being dangerous in Ash Hollow. Thought of Bradford Wells's predatory dinner invitations, growing more insistent by the day. A marriage of convenience. It should have felt like a betrayal of Thomas's memory. Instead, it felt like armor being offered, protection for the fight. Ahead, I have conditions, she said finally. Silas nodded, waiting. I keep asking questions, keep investigating the mine, no matter where it leads. Agreed. I stay in the boarding house until the wedding. Proper appearances. Another nod. And— Clara hesitated, then pressed on. You teach me everything you know about these mountains, every trail, every hiding place. If we're to expose Wells's corruption, I need to know escape routes. Something like respect flickered in Silas's eyes. Done. Though there's one more thing. He moved to the porch, lifting the broken music box with careful hands. Sarah's father made this for our wedding. Hasn't played since they died. Maybe it's time it did again. Clara understood the offering. Not just protection, but trust. A chance to heal something broken in both their lives. She took the music box, feeling its weight. I don't expect love, Mr. Boone. Silas, he corrected quietly. And I don't expect you to forget, Thomas. But maybe we can help each other remember how to live. The morning sun climbed higher, turning the corral's dust to floating gold. In the distance, wild horses ran free against the mountains, their hooves drumming a rhythm like heartbeats, learning to beat again. 1 week, Clara said. Time enough for bans to be posted for me to be sure this is right. Silas picked up his saddle. 1 week. Now, about those riding lessons. Clara set the music box down gently, its silence a promise waiting to be kept. First, you need to see what's in this journal. Then we can discuss how two people who barely know each other are going to convince this town they've found love in the shadow of so much death. A ghost of a smile touched Silas's lips, the first she'd seen. You'd be surprised what people will believe when they need to believe in something. Clara touched the marriage license, its blank spaces suddenly less daunting. Sometimes protection wore strange disguises. Sometimes salvation came not in the form you expected, but in the form you needed. Well then, Mr. Boo, Silas, teach me to ride. We've got a lot of ground to cover, and not much time to cover it in. The worn leather saddle creaked as Clara adjusted her seat for the third time that morning. Sarah Boone's old riding gear felt like borrowed history against her skin, telling stories of another woman who had once sat tall and proud on these same trails. Back straight, Silas instructed, leading her horse by the reins. You're fighting the motion. Horse moves like water. You need to flow with it. Clara forced herself to relax, feeling the rhythm of the mare's gait. After 2 hours of practice, her muscles ached in places she hadn't known existed. But there was freedom in this pain, a sense of growing strength. Better, Silas nodded. Now, what did you make of Wheeler's journal? It's damning. Clara's hands tightened on the reins, remembering the dead man's careful documentation. Every safety violation, every shortcut Wells took to save money. But the last entry, about Thomas planning to contact the governor, that's what got him killed. Silas's expression darkened. Wells's Denver friends arrive tomorrow. Man named Harrison Gates, mining investor with territorial judges in his pocket. Then we need to move faster. Clara pulled gently on the reins, bringing her horse to a stop. Wheeler mentioned a storage shed near the old shaft. Said Wells kept real records there, not the doctored ones he shows inspectors. Shed's gone now. Silas squinted at the mountainside. Burned down night after Thomas died. Accident with a miner's lamp, but the foundation's still there. At Silas's nod, Clara gathered her reins. Then that's where we start. Wells may have burned the papers, but he couldn't burn stone. Miners like Wheeler, they'd have hidden things. Messages. Proof. Silas studied her with that measuring gaze she was coming to know. Rough country up there. Sure you're ready? In answer, Clara nudged her horse forward, remembering Sarah Wheeler's words about truth being dangerous. The mare's steady gait carried her higher along the trail, each step more confident than the last. Silas mounted his own horse, following with quiet approval. They found the shed's remains near the sealed mine entrance. Blackened timbers and scattered stones telling their own story of desperate cover-ups. Clara dismounted, her legs shaky, but determined. The foundation stones lay exposed to the elements, some carved with miners' marks and dates. Here, Silas knelt by a cornerstone, brushing away years of debris. Crude letters had been chiseled into the rock. J.W. knows. Below it a series of numbers. Coordinates. Clara touched the rough carving. Claim numbers. Silas's voice held grim satisfaction. Wheeler wasn't just tracking accidents. He was marking which claims Wells worked illegal, pushing past boundary. Lines, stealing other men's digs. A sound of shifting gravel made them both freeze. Up the slope a man stood watching, one of Wells's guards, rifle cradled in his arms. Clara felt Silas tense beside her, ready to move. Just exploring. The guard's voice carried false casualness. Dangerous place for a morning ride. Showing my intended the property lines, Silas answered evenly. Planning to expand the ranch. Once we're married. The guard's eyes narrowed at this news, but the rifle didn't waver. Lot of accidents happen up here. Shame if your wedding plans got interrupted. Indeed, Clara found her voice, steel beneath the silk. Almost as shameful as a mining company losing its licenses over safety violations. My father's law firm in Boston specializes in such cases. They're quite interested in Western investments. felt Silas's silent approval as uncertainty flickered across the guard's face. After a long moment, he lowered his rifle. Best head back down. Storm's coming. They watched him disappear around the mountain's curve. Only then did Clara release her breath. He'll tell Wells. Good. Silas helped her mount, his hands steady, on her waist. Let him know you're not just some widow to be frightened away, though that bit about your father's law firm, complete fabrication, Clara admitted, settling into Sarah's saddle. Father's a bank clerk who's never been west of Philadelphia, but Wells doesn't know that. A ghost of a smile touched Silas's lips. You're learning. Local saying, rattlers rattle less when they think you've got bigger fangs. They rode down. In comfortable silence, the morning's lessons settling into muscle and memory. Clara felt the weight of Sarah's saddle, of Jacob's journal, of Thomas's death, but also the growing strength in her spine, the sureness in her hands on the reins. Tomorrow, Wells's Denver friends would arrive. Tomorrow, the real danger would begin. But today, she'd learned to ride, found new evidence, and faced down her first threat. Not bad for a morning's work. Harrison Gates arrived with the morning stage, his Denver suit as sharp as his predator's smile. Clara watched from the boarding house window as Wells greeted him, their handshake a conspiracy of wealth and influence. Behind Gates, two men in dark coats moved with the easy menace of hired guns trying to look respectable. The mine safety report sat heavy in Clara's lap, its damning contents secured from the mining office by young Tommy Jenkins, a clerk who'd lost his father to the same shaft that claimed Thomas. The boy's hands had trembled as he'd passed her the document. Whispered, words carrying years of bottled rage, make them pay. A soft knock at her door made her start. Come in. Sarah Wheeler entered, her pregnant form casting long shadows in the late afternoon light. Tommy told me what he did. Brave boy, foolish boy, Clara corrected gently, though pride colored her voice. If Wells discovers he copied these, he won't. Sarah settled into the room's chair with practiced care. Tommy's smart, changed all the dates in the official ledger, just enough to make any comparison worthless. She patted her belly absently. His father taught him numbers, said a man who can't count his own hours worked is asking to be cheated. Clara spread the report across her bed. These inspection dates, they're falsified. Wheeler's journal showed collapses on days the mine was supposedly closed for safety checks. Harrison Gates's specialty, Sarah's voice held bitter knowledge. He's not just an investor, he's a fixer. Makes problems disappear with paper and promises, and when that doesn't work, she left the thought unfinished. A horse's hooves clattered. On the street below, Clara moved to the window, recognizing Silas's duster as he dismounted. Their eyes met briefly before he turned toward the saloon where Gates and Wells had disappeared. Your intended's playing a dangerous game, Sarah observed. Been asking questions at the land office about those claim numbers we found. Clara's heart clenched. He shouldn't risk. Man's got his own ghosts driving him. Sarah's interruption was gentle. That bridge that killed his family? Gates signed off on its construction, certified it sound without a proper inspection. Understanding bloomed like desert lightning. That's why Silas agreed to help. It's not just about Thomas or the miners. Justice casts a long shadow in these mountains. Sarah levered herself up, moving to study the safety report. These numbers. Here, load limits for support beams. They're using pine instead of oak, cutting costs. But they're recording it as oak in the official logs. Can we prove it? Maybe. Sarah traced the columns with a practiced finger. Jake taught me bookkeeping. Said a woman should know numbers better than her own name. These supply manifests. They don't match the timber company's shipping records. I've got a friend at the railroad office who... The door burst open. Silas filled the frame, his face grave. Gates's men are searching the boarding house. Someone talked. Clara gathered the papers with swift precision. Years of keeping her father's. Books, lending speed to her movements. Sarah stepped between her and the door, one hand pressed to her back, as if easing pregnancy's burden. Though Clara saw the small derringer she'd palmed from her pocket. "The ranch," Silas said. "It's time." Clara hesitated. They'd planned to wait to gather more evidence before she moved to the ranch under the pretense of wedding preparations. But plans, like mine shaft timbers, sometimes needed hasty revision. "Go," Sarah urged. "I'll tell Martha you left to discuss ceremony arrangements." "Natural enough, with the wedding posted." Boots sounded on the stairs. Clara tucked the safety report into her skirts, squeezing Sarah's hand in silent gratitude. Silas led her to the back stairs, his presence solid as mountain stone. They emerged into the alley as shouts erupted from her room above. 2 horses waited in the shadows, Clara's mare and Silas's stallion, already saddled. Her carpet bag, packed that morning with bitter foresight, was secured to the mare's saddle. "Knew Gates would move fast," Silas muttered, helping her mount. "Man's got a reputation for efficiency." "The others?" Clara gathered her reins. "Tommy, Sarah, protected. Town's got its own ways of hiding things. Been doing it long enough." They rode out as dusk gathered, taking the back trails Silas had spent a week teaching her. Behind them, Ash Hollow's windows blazed with lamplight, each one a beacon marking secrets and lies. Ahead, the mountains rose like judgment, offering sanctuary and shadow in equal measure. Clara touched the report hidden in her skirts, feeling the weight of Tommy's trust, Sarah's courage, Silas's vengeance. The game had changed, but the stakes remained the same. Truth buried in darkness, waiting for light. The town hall's winter dance was a desperate grasp at normalcy. Lanterns strung like false stars above couples who moved in careful circles, dodging grief as much as each other's feet. Clara stood at the edge of the gathering, her black dress exchanged for a modest blue gown that had been Sarah Boone's. The faded photograph in her reticule seemed to burn against her hip, the one she'd found that morning while cleaning Silas's study, showing his wife and child standing before the fatal bridge. "May I have this dance, Miss Winslow?" Harrison. Gates materialized beside her, Denver manners wrapped around him like an expensive coat. Behind him, Wells watched with calculating eyes. Before Clara could respond, Silas's arm slipped around her waist. "My intendeds promised this dance to me, Mr. Gates." The 2 men measured each other with the precision of gunfighters choosing distance. Gates's smile never wavered. "Another time, perhaps. Though I must say your courtship has been remarkably swift. Love's like mining, sir." Clara met his gaze steadily. "Sometimes you strike gold when you least expect it." Silas led her onto the floor as the fiddles began a waltz. His hand at her waist was warm, steady. They moved together with the same rhythm they'd found on horseback, trust built through shared danger. "Gates has been asking questions," Silas murmured, guiding her through a turn. "About your father's law firm in Boston." "Let him ask." Clara caught sight of Tommy Jenkins by the punch bowl, his young face tight with worry. "He'll find nothing." "Because there's nothing to find. But it'll keep him occupied while Sarah checks the railroad records." "Dangerous game," says the man who spent yesterday cataloguing illegal claim stakes. Her hand tightened on his shoulder. "Did you know about Gates and the bridge when you first agreed to help?" Silas's step faltered slightly. "Sarah told you. She thought I should understand what I was marrying into." The fiddles reached a mournful note, holding it like a confession. Around them other couples danced, their shadows throwing dark patterns across the floor. Clara saw Wells deep in conversation with the town council members, his hands moving in persuasive gestures. "I dream of them sometimes," Silas said finally, his voice low. "Sarah and James, standing on that bridge. In the dreams, I'm there. I see the rot in the timbers, the decay gates and wells covered up with paint and papers. I call out, but they can't hear me." Clara thought of the photograph in her reticule, of the happiness captured there. "And now I dream of other things. Justice, maybe, or redemption." His eyes met hers. Both, perhaps. The music shifted to a livelier tune. Through the window, Clara saw Gates's men moving along the street, their presence a shadow on the evening's forced gaiety. One of them carried her copied safety report, taken from the boarding house room. But they didn't have Wheeler's journal. Safely hidden at the ranch, didn't have the claim numbers or the railroad records Sarah was gathering. They'll move soon, Silas muttered, watching Wells gesture toward them. Gates doesn't waste time once he's made a decision. Then neither. Can we? Clara's skirts brushed his legs as they turned. Sarah says the railroad records will be ready tomorrow. With those and Wheeler's journal. Assuming we live that long. You're not usually one for dramatic statements, Mr. Boone. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Not usually one for dancing either. Life's full of surprises. The music ended. Before they could separate, Wells appeared beside them, his manner expansively cordial. Miss Winslow, Mr. Boone, might I have a word? Mr. Gates has a proposition that could benefit us all. Clara felt Silas's hand tighten at her waist. In the corner, Tommy Jenkins watched with young, worried eyes. Through the window, Gates's men stood waiting in the lamplight, patient as gravity. Another time, perhaps, Clara smiled, echoing Gates's earlier words. My intended promise to show me the stars from his ranch tonight. The view must be magnificent so far from town lights. They left the hall under too many watching eyes. The night air carried winter's bite, promising snow. As Silas helped her mount, Clara touched the photograph in her reticule one last time. A reminder of what happened when good people stayed silent in the face of corruption. Tomorrow would bring its own dance, but this one would be for higher stakes than any fiddle tune could set. The corrupt ledger's numbers blurred before Clara's tired eyes as dawn crept over the mountains. She'd spent the night at Silas's ranch, propriety forgotten in the face of necessity. Sarah Wheeler had arrived an hour ago with the railroad records, her face drawn with triumph and exhaustion. There, Clara's finger traced a column of damning figures. Every timber shipment recorded as oak, but the railroad manifests show pine. Cheaper wood, half the strength. They didn't even try to hide it. Men like Gates and Wells. Sarah settled her pregnant form carefully in Silas's kitchen chair. They don't expect anyone to look too close, especially not women. Their mistake. Clara gathered the papers, mind racing. With Wheeler's journal, these manifests and the claim numbers, a floorboard creaked. They turned to find Silas in the doorway, his expression grave. Riders coming, Gates's men. Sarah moved with surprising speed for her condition, gathering the scattered documents. Clara's hands found Wheeler's journal, tucking it securely away. But the ledger, the damning proof of years of corruption, still lay exposed on the table. Back door, Silas directed, lifting his rifle from its peg. Sarah, your husband's waiting with the wagon behind the old creek bend. Hooves thundered closer. Clara hesitated, reaching for the ledger. Silas's hand caught hers, rough calluses against her softer palm. No time. But the evidence isn't worth your life. His eyes held hers. Something unspoken passing between. Them. Go. I'll hold them here. Sarah tugged at Clara's arm, but she stood frozen, feeling the warmth of Silas's hand, seeing the quiet determination in his face. Without thought, she stretched up and pressed her lips to his, a kiss born of fear and courage, and something deeper neither had dared name. When they broke apart, Silas's eyes had softened. That wasn't part of our arrangement, he murmured. I'm known to negotiate terms. Clara managed a smile, heart racing. Don't you dare die, Silas Boone. Wouldn't dream of it. Now go. Sarah pulled her through the back door as riders clattered into the front yard. They crouched in the pre-dawn shadows, making their way to the creek trail. Behind them, Clara heard Gates's cultured voice. Just a social call, Mr. Boone, though I'm surprised to find you alone, given your upcoming nuptials. Silas's response was lost as they reached the tree line. Sarah's husband, Jim, waited with their wagon, face tense. They climbed aboard quickly, Sarah squeezing Clara's hand. He'll be fine. Silas knows these mountains better than those Denver peacocks. Clara nodded, clutching Wheeler's journal. They had most of their evidence, but the ledger, her mind raced, remembering columns of numbers that proved Wells's deliberate negligence. She'd memorized the key figures, could reconstruct them if needed. Her father's insistence on mathematical precision, once a burden, now might prove salvation. The wagon, rocked along the back trail to town. Sarah hummed softly, one hand on her belly. That kiss wasn't just for show, she observed quietly. No, Clara admitted. It wasn't. Good. Man's been alone too long with his grief. Needs someone to remind him life's for living. They emerged. From the trees near the boarding house, Martha waited on the back steps, her usually cheerful face worried. Gates's other men are watching the front. But Tommy got word. The territorial marshal's due on tomorrow's stage. Wells doesn't know yet. Clara touched her lips, still feeling Silas's kiss. Tomorrow, then. We'll need everyone ready. Sarah, can you... Already done. The wives are spreading. The word. Miners work slow tomorrow. Keep Wells busy at the shaft. She smiled grimly. Man's so concerned with watching us weak women, he forgets how much we see, how much we remember. Clara helped Sarah down from the wagon, mind settling into familiar patterns of calculation and strategy. They had Wheeler's journal, the railroad manifests, witness testimonies, and her own memorized figures from the ledger. More importantly, they had a town's worth of anger and grief finally given purpose. Tomorrow would bring the marshal, and with him the chance for justice. But first, she had to know if Silas was safe. Had to know if that kiss was truly a beginning, or just another ending in a town too full of them. Go, Sarah said softly, reading her thoughts. Back way through Miller's pasture. I'll handle things. Here? Clara squeezed her friend's hand once, then slipped away into the lightning dawn, hope and fear running neck and neck in her heart's wild race. The threatening note waited on Clara's pillow when she returned to her boarding house room that evening, its message stark against cheap paper. Your intended survived his wife's accident. He might not survive another. The handwriting was educated, elegant, Gates making certain she knew exactly who held the power. Clara's hands shook as she burned the note, watching Gates's refined threats turn to ash. After leaving Sarah that morning, she'd circled back to Silas's ranch, only to find it deserted. No signs of struggle, but no signs of Silas either. Just emptiness and questions. A soft tap at her window made her start. Silas's face appeared behind the glass, shadows hiding any bruises Gates's men might have left. Clara rushed to unlock the sash, helping him slip inside. You shouldn't be here, she whispered, even as her hands moved over his arms, checking for injuries. They're watching the boarding house. Had to make sure you were safe. His voice was rough, tired. Gates kept me talking most of the day. Man likes to hear himself speak. About the bridge? Clara felt him tense under her touch. About consequences, about how accidents happen to people who don't understand their place. His eyes found hers in the dim light. About how much easier life is when you learn to look the other way. Like he did with the bridge? With Thomas? Anger steadied her voice. How many deaths has that man justified with his smooth words? Too many. Silas moved to the window, watching the street below. But he made a mistake today. Got angry when his threats didn't land. Mentioned things about the bridge collapse, details that weren't in any official report. Clara's mind raced. A confession. Near enough, if the marshal's willing to listen, if he arrives. Clara retrieved Wheeler's journal from its hiding place. Gates must know he's coming. They'll try to stop him. Already planned for that. Jim. Wheeler and some of the miners are riding out to meet the stage early. Guide it in the back way. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Sarah's idea. Said if men were half as clever as their wives, there'd be less widows in the world. Clara moved closer, drawn by the warmth of him, the solid reality of his presence. The ledger, safe. Gates's men were so busy searching the house, they never thought to check Sarah's old saddlebags in the stable. His hand found hers. Calluses. Familiar now against her skin. You've got quite a mind for strategy, Miss Winslow. Clara, she corrected softly. After that kiss this morning, I think we're past formalities. Something shifted in his eyes. Grief, making room for newer emotions. He lifted their joined hands, pressed his lips to her knuckles. That kiss wasn't part of our arrangement. Neither was falling in. She caught herself, but the unspoken word hung between them like morning mist, full of possibility. A sound from the street drew their attention. Gates's men were making their rounds, boots heavy on the wooden walkway. Silas moved deeper into the shadows, but his hand stayed linked with Clara's. "Tomorrow," he murmured. "Everything changes, or ends." Clara thought of the note's elegant threats, of Sarah's bridge, of Thomas in his lonely grave. "Gates won't go down easily." "No." Silas's free hand touched her cheek, gentle as dawn. "But he'll go down. Too many ghosts wanting justice, too many living finally ready to stand." Boots paused below her window. They held their breath, waiting. After an eternity, the footsteps moved on. "I should go." Silas's thumb traced her cheekbone. "Dawn comes early. Be careful." Clara pressed Wheeler's journal into his hands. "Keep this safe. Without it—" "I know." He tucked it securely inside his coat. Then, with the same quiet courage that had drawn her from the first, he bent and kissed her, not the desperate press of morning's fear, but something slower, deeper, full of promises neither was ready to voice. When they parted, Clara saw her own emotions reflected in his eyes, hope and fear tangled like winter branches reaching for spring light. "Tomorrow," she whispered. He slipped out the window like a shadow yielding to dawn, leaving Clara alone with her racing thoughts and the ashes of Gates's threats. Tomorrow would bring the marshal, justice, and maybe death. But tonight had brought something else, something neither had expected when they'd agreed to their practical arrangement. Love, it seemed, grew best in rocky soil, watered by courage and fertilized by shared purpose. Even in a town built on graves, life found a way to bloom. Thunder rolled across the mountains as Clara watched the first drops of rain darken the boarding house steps. Sarah's wedding ring, borrowed for protection and pretense, felt heavy. On her finger, a circle of memories carrying its own storm warnings. Dawn had brought no stage, no marshal, and no word from Jim Wheeler's rescue party. Martha's worried voice carried from the kitchen. "Miners won't go down today. Say the support. Beams are creaking something awful." "Wells won't give them choice," Sarah responded, her tone grim. "Not with Gates breathing down his neck." Clara moved from the window as Gates's men passed for the third time that hour. Their patience was wearing thin, their practiced menace sharpening. To true danger. They knew the marshal was coming, knew what Clara and Silas had gathered. The only question was whether they'd strike before justice arrived. The answer came with pounding on the boarding house door. Wells's voice carried through. The wood, wrapped in false concern. "Miss Winslow, a word about your intended." Clara's heart stopped. Sarah appeared beside her, pressing something cold and metal into her palm. The small derringer from her pocket. "Back door," she whispered. "Go." But Clara's feet had already carried her to the front entrance. She opened it to find Wells, Gates and their men crowding the porch, rain darkening their shoulders. Behind them she glimpsed a group of miners being herded toward the shaft, faces dark with helpless anger. "Where is he?" Her voice held steady. Gates stepped forward, Denver manners pristine even in violence. "Mr. Boone is assisting us with some administrative details. His cooperation could prevent certain accidents, both past and future." Understanding bloomed like blood in water. They had Silas, had the journal, the ledger, all their carefully gathered proof, had everything except Clara's hand tightened around Sarah's derringer. The marshal won't be stopped. The railroad records are meaningless without context. Gates's smile never reached his eyes. "Come, Miss Winslow, you're an intelligent woman. Surely we can reach an arrangement that benefits everyone. Like you arranged my Sarah's death." The new voice carried quiet thunder. Clara turned to find Jim Wheeler on the boarding house steps, clothes trail dusty, face set in stone. "Marshals, right behind us, Gates. Whole escort of territorial deputies, too." Relief weakened Clara's knees, but she kept her stance rigid. "Where is Silas?" "The mine office." Wells's answer came too quickly, earning a sharp look from Gates. "Being quite reasonable, actually. About to sign some documents explaining how—" His poor dead wife's confused friend imagined corruption where there was only honest business. The mine whistle split the air, 3 sharp blasts. Emergency code. Clara saw the miners stop their slow trek to the shaft, turning back toward town. Saw Gates's men shift uneasily as more riders appeared at the street's end, badges glinting dull silver in the rain. "Time's up," Clara said softly. To the devil's surprise, she found herself smiling, though there's still one arrangement we could discuss. Gates raised an elegant eyebrow. "Oh? You can surrender now, face the marshal's justice, or you can wait until those miners reach their families, learn you tried to force them down a shaft you knew was unstable, learn how many widows you've made, how many children you've orphaned." She lifted Sarah's derringer, small but steady. "Their justice might not be as civilized as the marshal's." Thunder cracked overhead like judgment. Gates studied her with new respect and old hatred. "You'd risk Boone's life? True love indeed. My intended," Clara's voice carried to the growing crowd, "is worth 10 of you. He's also a rancher who knows every tunnel in that mine, from searching for past victims. You really think you could hold him anywhere up there?" Right on cue, a figure appeared on the mine office's porch. Even at this distance, Clara would know Silas's stance anywhere. He had a rifle, and more importantly, he had Wheeler's journal. Held high where everyone could see, the marshal's party reached the edge of the crowd. Gates's men looked to him for orders, but Clara saw the fight drain from his face. He knew, in all his years of corruption and murder, he'd never faced the combined will of an entire town, never reckoned with the strength of miners' wives, with the patience of a widower's vengeance, with the determination of a woman fighting for love and justice in equal measure. "Mr. Gates," the marshal's voice carried calm authority, "I believe we have some matters to discuss." Clara kept her derringer trained on Gates until the deputies moved in. Only then did she lower it, letting out a breath that felt years long. The rain fell harder, washing away old dust, old lies, old grief. Time for new beginnings. The mine office's legal documents lay scattered across the marshal's temporary desk in the town hall. Each page a chapter in a story of greed and calculated murder. Clara sat beside Silas, their shoulders touching as they watched Gates and Wells face the weight of their crimes. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the air clean and sharp with possibility. The bridge contract. The marshal held up a yellowed page. "Signed by both of you, certifying materials you knew were substandard, dated 2 weeks before Mrs. Boone and her son." He let the sentence hang, heavy as a hangman's rope. Gates's Denver polish had cracked, showing the rot beneath. "You can't prove?" "Sarah Wheeler." Clara's voice cut through his protest. "Would you like to show them what your husband discovered?" Sarah stepped forward, her pregnancy making her slow but unstoppable as justice itself. She placed a leather-bound book before the marshal. "Jake's accounting ledger shows every shipment of cheap lumber, every forged inspection report. He was teaching me bookkeeping, you see. Said a woman should know numbers better than her own name." Wells's face had gone grey. "Those records were destroyed." "Copies, Mr. Wells." Sarah's smile held 3 years of widow's grief. "A good bookkeeper always keeps copies." The marshal nodded to his deputies. "Take them to the territorial jail. We'll sort through the charges there." He turned to Silas. "Though I'd say murder's at the top of the list." As Gates and Wells were led away, Clara felt Silas's hand find hers. His fingers were scraped raw from his escape. He'd hidden in the mine's oldest tunnel, the one where he'd recovered so many bodies, waiting until Gates's men gave up searching. "You knew I'd get free." "Not a question." Clara squeezed his hand. "Knew you'd never leave me to face them alone." The marshal cleared his throat. "About that mine shaft, inspector's on his way, but from what I'm hearing, it's not safe." "No." Silas's voice was firm. "Needs to be sealed. Too many ghosts in those tunnels." "Jobs," Wells protested from the doorway. "You'll kill the town." "Town's already changing." Clara stood, drawing strength from Silas's solid presence. "The railroad's pushing west. They'll need a depot somewhere." For crews to rest. Ash Hollow's got good water, good grazing, Sarah nodded. And good people, people who know how to build something honest if given the chance. The marshal gathered the documents, each page a brick in Gates's prison cell. I'll send word once the trial date's set. You'll all need to testify. After he left, Clara turned to find Silas studying her with an expression she'd never seen before. Something between awe and devotion, with a hint of amused exasperation. A railroad depot? He raised an eyebrow. I might have been discussing possibilities with the railroad agent when I was gathering those shipping manifests. Clara felt her cheeks warm. Life's got to be about more than mining and mourning. That why you stayed? To save the town? I stayed because a widowed rancher offered me justice instead of comfort, offered me purpose instead of protection. She touched his cheek, feeling the strength and vulnerability there. The town's salvation was just a bonus. Sarah's quiet laugh broke the moment. Well, if you two are done making eyes at each other, there's still a wedding to plan. Unless that arrangement's changed, Clara met Silas's gaze. Has it? His answer was to pull Sarah's old ring from his pocket, not the borrowed one Clara wore, but the one that had waited in his drawer since his wife's death. Been carrying this since the dance, waiting for the right moment to ask proper. He took a breath. Clara May Winslow, would you marry me? Not for protection or pretense, but because some souls are meant to heal together. Clara felt tears warm her eyes. You're a poet now, Mr. Boone. Only when necessary. His smile held promise of more. That a yes. She held out her hand, letting him replace Sarah's borrowed ring with this new one, still carrying old memories, but ready for fresh dreams. Yes, though I warn you, I plan to meddle in town affairs, something fierce. Wouldn't have it any other way. He kissed her soft and sure, tasting of rain and tomorrow. Sarah's happy sigh carried years of friendship. About time. Now, let's see about making this town into something worth building a life around. Through the window, Clara watched Gates and Wells being led toward their fate. The mine's dark mouth seemed less threatening now, its ghosts finally finding rest. Tomorrow would bring challenges, a town to rebuild, wounds to heal, justice to see through. But tonight was for new beginnings, sealed with a kiss that tasted of hope. The rescue map trembled in Clara's hands as the earth shuddered. Beneath Ash Hollow, the mine's warning whistle had come too late. Wells's last act of vengeance from his jail cell, ordering his remaining loyal foreman to send men into the weakened shaft one final time. Now the mountain was claiming its due. Decades of negligence collapsing into nightmare. They're trapped in the North Tunnel. Tommy Jenkins's young voice cracked with urgency as he traced the route on the hand-drawn map. 6 men, including my uncle. Waters rising from the lower levels. Silas studied the maze of tunnels, his face carved with grim purpose. Main shafts blocked, but there's an old airway here. His finger found the spot. Used it during the last collapse. Tight fit, but no. Clara grabbed his arm. You can't. Those men trusted Wells because I wasn't brave enough to stop him years ago. His eyes held hers, love and duty warring. Some debts need paying. Around them, the town mobilized with the efficiency of long practice. Women prepared bandages and hot coffee. Miners gathered ropes and tools. Sarah Wheeler organized teams, her leadership unquestioned despite her advancing pregnancy. Then I'm coming with you. Clara's voice brooked no argument. I've memorized these tunnels same as you. Like hell you are. But Silas's protest lacked conviction. He knew her too. Well now, knew the steel beneath her soft exterior. You're needed up here. Someone's got to coordinate the rescue. That's my job. Sarah handed Clara a miner's lamp. Already sent riders for the doctor in Carson City. Jim's organizing the support teams. You two know those tunnels better than anyone, and 4 hands work faster than 2. A younger miner stepped forward, face streaked with coal dust. Begging pardon, Mr. Boone, but she's right. My brother's down there. I trust you both. Thunder rumbled. No, not thunder. The mountain, shifting again. Time running out like water in the depths. Silas's jaw clenched, then relaxed. Stay close. Do exactly as I say. They move fast after that. Lamplight caught the silver in Silas's hair as they entered the airshaft, his broad shoulders barely clearing the narrow walls. Clara followed, her skirts tied up practically, Sarah's old mining lamp steady in her grip. The earth groaned around them, a sound like souls in torment. This was Thomas's section. Clara's voice echoed oddly in the confined space. Before Wells killed him for trying to save other men from this fate. Silas's tone held no bitterness now, only focus. Listen. Through the mountains' complaints, they heard it. Faint tapping. Morse code, the miners' language of disaster. Clara counted the pattern, hope flaring. They're alive. North Tunnel, like Tommy said. They worked their way deeper, squeezing through gaps that seemed to shrink with each tremor. Water dripped steadily, promising worse below. Clara's world narrowed to Silas's back ahead of her, the rhythm of their breathing, the steady count of taps growing louder. The collapse had left a space barely big enough to crawl through. Beyond it, lamplight revealed faces grey with coal dust. And fear, 6 men trapped but alive. Among them Tommy's uncle cradled a broken arm. Boone? One miner squinted through the dust. And Mrs. Boone to be, Lord above. Save the thanks for topside. Silas was already rigging ropes. Water's rising, we move now. They worked with desperate efficiency, passing men through the narrow gap one at a time. Clara's hands found strength she didn't know she had, pulling and guiding, offering hope in whispers. The mountain's protests grew louder, more urgent. The last man had barely cleared the gap when the ceiling shifted. Silas shoved Clara forward as rock crashed behind them. They ran, half carrying Tommy's uncle, feeling the earth's fury chase them through the dark. They emerged into daylight to find what seemed like the whole town waiting. Sarah directed the injured toward Martha's capable hands. Families reunited. With tears and embraces, the mountain settled, perhaps satisfied with claiming only rock and timber this time. Clara turned to find Silas watching her, his face streaked with coal dust and something like wonder. You're crazy, woman, coming down there with me. She touched his cheek, leaving her own sooty mark. You're stuck with my kind of crazy, remember? Said so yourself this morning? His laugh held relief and love and future. Suppose I did. He looked around at the gathered town, at lives saved and community strengthened. Reckon we all got a fresh start today. The mine whistle sounded once more. Not a warning this time, but an all clear. A new sound for a new chapter in Ash Hollow's story, one where grief gave way to hope, and love rose from the ashes of loss, strong as mountain stone. The blood-stained bandana lay on Martha's kitchen table, a stark reminder of the day's near tragedy. Clara's hands shook slightly as she cleaned. A cut on Silas's forehead, the lamplight casting warm shadows across his tired face. Around them, the boarding house had become an impromptu hospital, filled with the soft sounds of healing and hope. Stop fussing, Silas murmured, catching her wrist gently. Just a scratch. You could have died. The words caught in her throat. The day's fear finally finding voice. That last collapse didn't. His thumb traced circles on her pulse point. Thanks to you. Though next time I tell you to stay above ground, I'll ignore you just the same. Clara managed to smile, relief making her lightheaded. Better get used to it, Mr. Boone. Sarah Wheeler's laugh carried from the next room where she tended to. Tommy's uncle, Lord you two, already bickering like proper man and wife. The territorial marshal's arrival earlier had brought news that doubled their victory. Gates and Wells, faced with overwhelming evidence, had confessed to years of corruption. The territorial governor himself would attend their trial, promising justice not just for Ash Hollow, but for every town they'd bled dry. Marshall says they'll hang. Silas's voice held no satisfaction, only quiet closure. For Sarah and James, for Thomas, for all of them. Clara set aside the bandana, its rust red. Stains a final testament to the mine's cost. Will it be enough? Justice rarely is. He drew her closer, until she stood between his knees, his forehead resting against her middle. But it's a start. Town's got a chance now. Future that's not built on graves. Through the window, Clara watched miners' families heading home, carrying food Martha had prepared, supporting injured loved ones. The collapse had wounded Ash Hollow one final time, but it had also shown the town's true strength, not in its coal seams, but in its people. Railroad agents coming next week. She ran her fingers through Silas's silver-streaked hair, feeling him relax under her touch. Says the depot will need a proper hotel. And with the governor's attention, there's talk of making us a proper county seat. Making plans already, I see. Someone has to, unless you'd rather I focus solely on being a proper rancher's wife? His laugh rumbled against her belly. Proper's never been our style. He lifted his head, eyes crinkling. Though about that wedding, 2 weeks. Clara's voice held certainty. Time enough for bruises to heal and preparations to be made. Sarah's already got the women organizing? 2 weeks? His eyebrow rose. Mighty confident I'll be ready by then. Oh, I am. She kissed him softly, tasting coal dust and tomorrow. You've had 3 years of waiting. I'd say that's plenty. A knock at the door interrupted his response. Tommy Jenkins entered, his young, the face glowing with news. Mr. Boone, Mrs. Wheeler says to tell you, the governor's office telegraphed. They're naming the new mining safety law after Thomas Fletcher. Says his death opened their eyes to corruption all through the territory. Clara felt Silas's hands tighten on her waist. Thank you, Tommy. Your uncle. Resting comfortable. Doc says the arm will heal clean. The boy hesitated. About the mine. Sealed properly this time. Silas's voice was gentle. But the railroad will need strong backs. Honest work in the sun. Tommy nodded. Hope replacing worry. Pa always said I was too smart for mining anyway. Maybe the railroad needs clerks. I'm good with numbers. We'll need plenty of those. Clara smiled. Come by tomorrow. We'll talk about it. After Tommy left, Silas pulled Clara closer. Running the town already. Someone has to build while you're off breaking wild horses. She traced the bandage on his forehead. Speaking of building, I was thinking about the ranch house. What about it? It needs life again. Light. Maybe a nursery eventually. His breath caught. Then slowly, a smile dawned. Not the ghost of one she'd first seen, but full and real as sunrise. Eventually, he agreed softly. Though first I need to fix that music box. Been too long since there was dancing in that house. Through the open window, evening settled over Ash Hollow like a gentle hand. The mine's dark mouth lay silent, its ghosts finally at rest. Tomorrow would bring railroad, agents and county seats, new beginnings built on hard-won wisdom. But tonight was for healing, for holding, for the quiet miracle of love blooming in soil enriched by grief's deep ploughing. Spring came early to Ash Hollow that year, as if the earth itself were eager for renewal. Clara knelt in the ranch house garden, pressing new seeds into soil that had lain fallow since Sarah Boone's death. Around her the morning hummed with promise, hammers ringing from the new railroad depot's construction, wagon wheels carrying lumber instead of coal, life returning to a town that had forgotten how to grow. Thought I'd find you here, Sarah. Wheeler's voice carried easily now that she'd delivered her healthy son, named Jacob for his father. She settled onto the garden bench, cradling the infant. Though most brides spend their last week fussing over dresses, not dirt, most brides didn't come west to marry a dead man. Clara sat back on her heels, surveying the neat rows she'd planted. Most brides didn't find life sprouting from grief's ashes. Most brides aren't you. Sarah adjusted little Jake's blanket. Though I did bring something that might interest you more than seeds. From her basket, she drew out the repaired music box, Silas's wedding gift to his first Sarah, now restored by careful hands. Clara took it reverently, opening the lid. The melody spilled out clear and sweet, no longer broken. Tommy Jenkins fixed it. Sarah's smile held pride. Boy's got a gift for mechanical things. Railroad's already talking about apprenticing him. To their master engineer. Clara closed the box gently, saving its music for the wedding day. The whole town's changing. Did you see Martha's boarding house? She's adding a proper restaurant, talking about making it a hotel. Heard she's hiring. Tommy's sister to help manage it? Girl's got a head for business. Sarah's eyes held knowing humor, almost like someone's been teaching her accounts. She's a quick study. Clara brushed dirt from her skirts, remembering her own father's patient lessons in bookkeeping. Though, I'm not sure the territorial governor expected his new county seat treasurer to be teaching business classes in her spare time. Don't see why not. Man's got sense enough to name a mining law after Thomas Fletcher, sense enough to appoint a woman who exposed corruption to watch his county's money. The sound of hooves interrupted their conversation. Silas rode into view, leading a string of horses, wild ones, newly gentled for the railroad's use. He'd found his calling there, turning his gift with troubled horses into a thriving business. The ranch was coming alive again, not with mining's borrowed wealth, but with honest work and new purpose. Ladies, he dismounted, crossing to kiss Clara's cheek. His eyes caught sight of the music box, softening with memory and hope. It's fixed. Then, Tommy's work. Clara leaned into his solid warmth, though I had to promise him first dance at the wedding. Boys earned it. Silas's hand found hers, dirt and calluses meeting equally. Whole town has. Sarah stood carefully settling, Jake against her shoulder. Speaking of the town, Jim says the last miners found work with the railroad, better pay, safer conditions, and with the depot coming, and the courthouse, Clara added. Governor's sending a proper judge next month. No more rushing cases. To Denver, building something that'll last. Silas surveyed their garden, the freshly planted seeds promising summer's bloom. Something honest. Sarah's knowing smile deepened. Unlike that story you two spun about falling in love for convenience's sake, Clara felt her cheeks warm even as Silas's laugh rumbled against her side. Well, that part might have started honest. Enough, just grew into something truer. Like seeds, Sarah nodded toward the garden. Given the right soil, right tending, amazing what can bloom. She gathered her basket, settling Jake more comfortably. Now, about that wedding, Martha's got the cake planned, women are finishing the decorations, music's arranged, seems half the town plays something, just need the bride to stop planting. Long enough to finish her dress. It's finished. Clara's fingers found the music box again. Sarah's, the first Sarah's wedding ring, my mother's veil, Martha's lace. Pieces of all the love that brought us here. Silas's arm tightened around her waist. After Sarah left, they stood in comfortable silence, watching spring sunlight gild their garden's promise. The music box's melody seemed to linger in the air, no longer a ghost of memory, but a prelude to joy. Weeks a long time, Silas murmured against her hair. Clara smiled, feeling life pulse beneath her feet, in her heart, all around them. Worth waiting for, Mr. Boone, like all the best things are. The hand-carved horse emerged from Silas's whittling knife, taking shape as the evening shadows lengthened across the ranch house porch. Clara watched from her perch on the steps, admiring how his rough hands created such delicate details, mane flowing, muscles tensed, capturing the wild spirit of the mustangs that had helped heal his heart. "Wedding gift?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "For the nursery." His voice held quiet certainty. "First of many. Figure any child of ours will need reminding where they came from. Wild hearts and stubborn hope. Tomorrow would bring their wedding, but tonight was for these final quiet moments of becoming." Inside, Martha and Sarah supervised the last preparations, their cheerful voices carrying through open windows. The whole town had pitched in. Flowers from carefully tended gardens, food from newly prosperous kitchens, joy from hearts, finally, are free to celebrate. Had a letter from Thomas's sister. Clara pulled the paper from her pocket. "She's glad," she says. "Glad he helped expose the corruption. Glad his name means something more than tragedy now. She's naming her new baby Thomas." Silas set down his knife, studying the wooden horse. "You ever regret coming here to marry him, finding all this darkness instead?" "No." Clara moved to sit beside him, feeling the rightness of their shoulders. "Touching. Thomas's letters brought me here, but they weren't real, just pretty words hiding ugly truths. What we built, what the town's building, that's real. Solid as mountain stone." A rider appeared on the road, Jim Wheeler, returning from his new job supervising railroad construction. He waved as he passed, calling out, "Stage brought the governor's man. Says the new courthouse plans are approved." Clara felt Silas's quiet laugh. "County seat indeed. You'll have your hands full, Madam Treasurer." "Our hands." She threaded her fingers through his. "Though I notice you're keeping safely out of town politics, hiding out here with your horses. Someone's got to keep wild things gentle." He set the carved horse aside, turning to face her fully. "Speaking of wild things, got something to show you." He led her to the stable, its interior transformed from the neglected space she'd first seen. Fresh hay filled the stalls, tack gleamed on organized pegs, and in the corner, a nursery. Clara's breath caught at the sight of the small wooden cradle, beautifully carved with running horses. "Not rushing anything," Silas said quickly. "Just hoping. Sarah always said a home needs room to grow into joy." Clara touched the cradle's smooth rail, feeling years of love in its crafting. "Your Sarah was wise. Both my Sarahs were." He pulled her close, his heartbeat steady against her cheek. "Though this Clara, she's something else entirely." A sound at the stable door made them turn. Tommy Jenkins stood there, pride warring with embarrassment on his young face. In his hands, he held something that glinted gold in the lantern light. "It's for tomorrow," he said, holding out the repaired music box. "Added something special, a new song, along with the old one, for new beginnings." Clara took the box, opening it carefully. Two melodies twined together, Sarah's original wedding song and a newer tune, one the town band had played the day the mine was sealed, past and future, grief and joy, dancing together in perfect harmony. "Tommy Jenkins," Clara's voice wavered, "you're going to make some engineer mighty proud one day." The boy's chest swelled, but his eyes held shadows. "Miss Clara, Mr. Boone, could you hold on to this for me?" He pulled out a worn piece of paper, his father's last pay stub from the mine. "Don't want to forget what we fought for, but don't want it weighing me down neither." Silas took the paper with gentle hands. "We'll keep it safe, reminder of where we've been, not where we're going." After Tommy left, they stood in the stable's quiet, listening to the music box's twin melodies. Through the door they could see Ash Hollow's lights beginning to shine in the dusk. Not the desperate glare of a mining town, drinking away its sorrows, but the warm glow of homes and hopes. "Tomorrow," Clara said softly, leaning into Silas's strength. "Tomorrow," he agreed, his voice rich with promise. "Though I'm thinking it started long ago. That day you stepped off the stage, ready to fight the whole world for justice. Found love instead. Found both." He kissed her temple. "Found home." The music box played on, its old grief and new joy twining together like vines climbing toward light. Tomorrow would bring white lace and wedding vows, but tonight was for this quiet understanding of how far they'd come, how love could grow from ashes, how hope could rise from the deepest minds of despair. The family Bible lay open on Martha's best tablecloth, its pages ready to record new names alongside old ones. Clara stood before her mirror, wearing her mother's veil and the first Sarah's carefully preserved lace, feeling the weight of histories merging. Through the window, she could see Ash Hollow's church filling with people, not mourners this time, but celebrants. "You're not crying, are you?" Sarah Wheeler adjusted the veil, little Jake sleeping peacefully in a basket nearby. "Because if you start, I'll start, and we've got enough water in this town without adding tears. Happy ones, maybe." Clara touched the dried wildflowers in her bouquet, gathered from the mountainside where she and Silas had first found evidence of Wells's corruption. "Did you ever think, that first day when I arrived, that the woman who came to marry a dead man would end up saving us all?" Sarah's smile held sunshine. No, but I didn't think I'd be bouncing a healthy baby and helping run a railroad depot either. Life's got its own way of mining hope from sorrow. A soft knock preceded Martha's entrance. The boarding house owner, now hotel proprietor, carried something wrapped in faded silk. Found this in Sarah's, the first Sarah's things. Think it's time it saw light again. Inside the silk lay a delicate lace handkerchief, monogrammed with the initials S.B. Clara's hands trembled as she took it. I couldn't. You can. Martha's voice held years of wisdom. You're Sarah Boone's successor, not her replacement. She'd want her love to keep growing, same as that garden you planted. Music drifted through. The window, Tommy's newly repaired music box, its dual melodies calling past and present together. Right on time, Jim Wheeler appeared at the door, dressed in his Sunday best. "Ready?" he asked. "Silas is wearing a path in the church floor." Clara tucked the handkerchief into her sleeve, took one last look in the mirror. The woman who stared back wasn't the same one who'd stepped off that stagecoach with Eastern dreams and Western fears. This woman had fought corruption, saved lives, found love in grief's shadow, helped build something lasting from ruin's rubble. The church doors opened to afternoon light and faces bright with joy. Clara saw Tommy Jenkins manning the music box, his sister Ellen helping Martha seat late arrivals, miners' wives who'd become confidants, railroad workers who'd helped seal the mine's dark memories, children who'd never know the fear of fathers, descending into deadly depths, and Silas, standing tall at the altar, silver threading his hair like mountain streams, eyes holding all the love that grief had taught him to cherish. The wooden horse he'd carved stood proudly on the altar table, promising future cradles and children's laughter. They'd chosen to write their own vows, breaking tradition like they'd broken corruption's hold. Clara spoke first, her voice carrying, "Clear as mountain air. I came west chasing paper promises, but found truth in calloused hands and honest hearts. I promised to build with you, heal with you, grow gardens in grief's soil and find stars in life's darkest shafts. To love not despite our scars, but because of the strength they've taught us." Silas's hands tightened on hers, his voice rough with emotion. "I was a man of silence, letting ghosts speak louder than hope. You taught me that love's not a finite resource, that hearts can mine new joy from old pain. I promise to face each dawn with your courage, to gentle life's wild places, to fill our home with more music than memory." The priest barely finished his blessing before Silas kissed her, tasting of sunshine and tomorrow. Tommy's music box played its harmonious duet. Sarah's wedding song and the town's victory melody, wound together like love's own alchemy. After, as guests filled Martha's newly expanded dining room, Clara found a quiet moment with Silas on the porch. The setting sun painted Ash Hollow in shades of promise, turning the sealed mine entrance into just another part of the mountain's ancient face. "Happy?" Silas asked, his arm warm around her waist. Clara touched the first Sarah's handkerchief, feeling its delicate strength. "More than. We've got a garden to tend, a nursery to fill, a town to build." She smiled up at him. "Think you can handle that much joy, Mr. Boone?" His kiss held answer enough, sweet as spring water, solid as mountain stone. Inside, their guests laughed and celebrated, but here in the gathering dusk, they held their own. Quiet ceremony, love's determined triumph over loss, hope's patient victory over despair. 1 year later, the new town charter hung proudly in Ash Hollow's courthouse, its fresh ink recording not just laws, but lessons bought with grief and gilded by hope. Clara stood before it, one hand resting on her growing belly, the other holding a letter announcing the territorial governor's final verdict. Gates and Wells would never again see freedom, their sentences as solid as the mountain they'd tried to hollow with greed. "Thought I'd find you here." Silas's voice carried warm across the polished floors of the building that had once been merely a dream. He joined her, studying the charter's careful script. "Tommy's train comes in today. Boy's finished his first semester at that engineering school in Denver. Martha's planned a proper welcome feast. Clara leaned into his strength, feeling their child move beneath her heart. Ellen's running the hotel like she was born to it, already talking about adding a third floor. Through the courthouse windows, Ash Hollow spread out like a testament to renewal. The railroad depot bustled with honest commerce, the sealed mine entrance now overgrown with wild roses that Sarah Wheeler had planted. The town had found its true gold, not in coal seams, but in the hearts of people who'd learned to mine hope from despair's depths. Had word from Thomas's sister. Clara touched the charter's glass. Her boy's walking now. Wants to bring him here someday, show him where his namesake helped change things. He'll find welcome. Silas's hand covered hers on her belly. Same as this little one will, though if she's half as stubborn as her mama, she... Clara smiled. Awful sure about that, Mr. Boone? Sarah always wanted a daughter. His voice held no pain now, only gentle memory. Figure she might have had a word with God about it. They walked home together, through streets that had forgotten how to wear shadows. The ranch house rose before them, its garden blooming wild and civilized at once. Like love itself, Clara thought, like life in this reborn town. Inside, the nursery waited. Silas's carved horses ran eternal races along the cradle rail, keeping company with the first one he'd made, the one that had stood witness at their wedding. The music box sat on a shelf, still playing its harmony of old songs and new dreams. Sarah Wheeler was waiting on their porch, little Jake toddling among the flower beds she helped Clara tend. Town council's approved the new school, she announced, without preamble. And not just reading and figures, proper engineering classes, business courses. Your idea about preparing for the future rather than hiding from the past. Our idea, Clara corrected, settling into the porch chair that had once held only grief's ghost. Though I notice you're listed as head trustee. Someone's got to keep you two dreamers grounded. Sarah scooped up Jake as he wandered too close to the steps. Speaking of which, Jim's got 3 new colts ready for gentling whenever you're up to it, Silas. He nodded, but his eyes stayed on Clara, soft with future's light. They'd learned to balance it all, past and present, memory and hope, the wild and the gentle. Their love had grown like the roses over the mine shaft, finding beauty in darkness's wake. The afternoon sun painted Ash Hollow in shades of promise as Clara looked out over the town that had become so much more than a stop on her journey west. Here, she'd found not the end of dreams, but their transformation. Here, she and Silas had learned that love wasn't about replacing loss, but about expanding hearts to hold both grief and joy, memory and hope, endings and beginnings. Their child moved again, strong and sure as mountain streams. Around them, Ash Hollow hummed with honest life, Tommy's train whistling in the distance, Martha's hotel kitchen preparing welcome home feasts, Ellen's fresh paint brightening old walls, Sarah's roses climbing toward heaven. Ready? Silas offered his arm. Clara took it, feeling the future pulse beneath her heart, seeing it bloom all around them. Always, she said, and together they walked into the evening light, their shadows stretching toward tomorrow, their love as deep as mountain, roots as wild as hope itself.